careful you don't own this game.
Right, I'll have to record the first bit again to Sarah. That's why I'll do my video. Now, and also there's whole tables about how quickly the fuel evaporates inside different tanks, right? And I've just put here, there's a little thing on the sheet. When you've done one turn of the game, these are what the rules say. It says you've now completed one game turn, a full week of the real campaign. Take a breather, have a beer and a sandwich, contact your loved ones to let them know you're still alive, and return for another game turn. It's just so complicated. Now imagine, right? Imagine this is, why am I telling you about this? Imagine if maybe you like playing games, and you say, oh, can you get me a game for Christmas? And I give you the campaign for North Africa as a Christmas present. And then the rule book would be like, the wide-eyed terror that you would have just opening the first pages and thinking, how am I ever going to learn all this information? You think about that. And basically, that's just a game. One game written by a few people, probably for a bit of a joke, but I mean, you can actually buy it on eBay if you want. I can send you a link. Quite reasonable nudges. I know you like war games. Can you imagine? I suppose really, how much information can you process in your mind? How much information can our brains keep? Not a lot really, is there? And so even a game kind of reminds us that, we're like a little cup. We can put a little bit of information in and then we're full and we soon forget things. Okay, but we've been reading today, these verses, says there, like the first paragraph says about God, you've searched me, Lord, and you know me. God knows when I sit and when I rise. God knows my thoughts, okay? And if that's true of one person, then God knows the thoughts of everyone. Suddenly, we're not just talking about a game, are we? The campaign, God, that's a piece of cake for God. The Bible is saying that he knows the thoughts of he knows everything that we're thinking, down to that detail. And that's suddenly mind-blowing, isn't it? And the second verse talks about God who's perfect in knowledge. And so, that's just giving us a little hint there. And then the Hebrews, the third paragraph says there, halfway through that third paragraph, nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. So it's using picture language to describe God is like looking at everything and nothing is hidden. So he sees everything. And that's pretty amazing. And so that's what the Bible calls, the word is omniscience. It means omni, all, science, knowledge. So God knows everything. That's basically what it is. But because we're theologians, we have to use Latin, apparently. So God knows everything. Now, we're going to just think. I've just got two things to talk about there to say why is that such a great thing? What does it mean? But just before we do, what does that mean? In a nutshell, I suppose it means this. We can't outsmart God. We can't bargain with God because he knows everything. It's not like we can sort of come to him and do a deal and say, well, look, if you do this, I'll do... God knows everything. There's nothing we can offer him that he doesn't already know anyway. We can't fool him, and we can't ever hope that he'll forget anything. So that might be really wonderful, or that might be really scary, and probably it's a bit of both. So let's just have a little think then. I've only got two things to say today, and then we can perhaps have some discussion afterwards. And I've just put down a few, in the sermon, some of the things I've put in green. We don't have to look at all these, but they're just little questions to maybe get you thinking. Maybe you might have questions in your own mind. We can look at those. So the first thing I've put here is we need to truly know that God truly knows. And I suppose I put it like that because it's good for us to know how little we know and how much God knows. It's good for us to know that. You know, they say a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, isn't it? You know how there's that quote by Mark Twain, you know, when I was 14, I thought my dad was the stupidest man in the world. But when I was 21, I was amazed at how much my dad had learned. And what he's really saying there is that I've sort of grown up a bit and realised that I thought I knew everything at 14. And we need to know that. I've put a picture there from Friends. They don't know that we know they know we know. Sometimes you have movies, don't you, where who knows what? Do they know that I know? Do you? And there's all that. Maybe the tension builds up there. Or obviously in that episode of Friends, it was all apparently everyone, they were all playing trick jokes on each other, and who knew what? But what I've put that in there because we need to know this, okay? And the first passage, the Bible passage, Psalm 139, David knows it. David knows that. He says, Lord, you've searched me and you know me. David has come to that realization. And what does he do? I haven't written the verses down, but at the end of the psalm, David says this, Lord, search me and try me. See if there's any wicked way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. So David says, you've already searched me. You already know me. But at the end of the psalm, he says to God, now search me again. And why? I mean, it's not like God's going to find something that he hadn't found before. But what David is doing is he's saying, look, I know that you see everything. So I'm willingly opening myself up to you. In a sense, he's saying, look, I've realised now that you know me, so I'm just going to be honest with you. And I think the great benefit of being hit in the eyes by this truth is that it forces us to live honest lives. You know, that we can't hide from him and that he sees everything. So if we're going to kind of survive that scary existence, our only hope is not to run away from him, but to run to him. And that's why we need to know this. And you get the same thing in Hebrews, where it says, nothing is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of him to whom we must give an account. And I'm just going to read a little section from a book that I was reading the other day, just to go into a bit more detail. And it says, God knows himself and all things that come from himself. He knows all things as they actually come to pass, past, present and future. And he knows them in all their true relationships. So he knows how everything fits together. He knows the hidden things, which we can't even see. He penetrates to the depths of the human heart. And he knows what is possible as well as what is actual. So all the things that have never happened but could have happened. All things that might occur under certain circumstances, he knows. And he's perfect in knowledge. And then he goes on to talk about some quotes. So it's everything. And he knows everything always. So there's no learning with God. There's no forgetting. There's no surprises. I mean, it's just one everlasting act of knowing. That's why I mentioned it the way I did before. And surely this is it's like one of the basic facts about God, isn't it? God 101, if you like, that he knows everything. And for us, I think it is like, I've used this illustration before, but there's that famous movie, isn't there, where the hero is offered the red pill to show him the truth, and the blue, do you want to know the truth? This is that moment again where that hit. I remember being hit between the eyes when I realised God knows everything about me, even the things that I hide from everyone, even the things I hide from myself. He knows. And so it's this kind of call to be honest, to live an honest and open life. And it's an invitation to all of us. You know, God isn't saying, you know, I don't know, I can't find you. He's saying, look, in a sense, it's an invitation to us to be part of this. So look, I know, stop running. I know, and if you've put your trust in me already, well, what are the implications for that? He knows all the things that you're worrying about. He knows all the things that you're not worrying about that are also going to happen to you. He knows all the things that you're worried about that are not going to happen to you. Do you know what I mean? There's this constant, you can trust him. He knows. You know, when you talk to somebody and you explain your situation to them, and they're sympathetic and they're caring, and you know, they make you a cup of tea and they chat, and the rest of it, and they say, oh yeah, and sometimes they might say, oh, I know how you feel, and they might not, or maybe you haven't explained everything to them for whatever reason, and you're not sure whether they've really got it. Do you know? That isn't true with God. He's got it. So we can come to him. And he says, you know, pour out your heart to me. So it's great that we can do that. So that's really the first point. We need to know this so that we can live honestly before him. And the second thing is, well, we can trust a God who knows us totally. Right? And this is where we're thinking about analysis paralysis a bit, really. Every minute, 204 million emails are sent around the world. Okay? Every minute, 500 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube. So in 60 seconds, there's 500 hours of video to watch. Right? And so on. 4 million Google searches in a day, I think. And Facebook shares 25 million things in a minute. I mean, doesn't it just want to make you go, ah? Have you ever had information overload? Have you ever been faced with that? You're trying to make a decision maybe, and suddenly you've got so much information that your brain is about to explode. And information overload is a real psychological condition. And it can lead to things like stress, anxiety, irritability, impatience, the so-called analysis paralysis, where you've just got so much information that you're like a rabbit in the headlights. You do not know what decision to make. Analysis paralysis. Also a board gaming term as well.
I was going to say, that's how I feel when you explain.
For someone who takes forever to make their moves in a board game. Analysis paralysis. But it can also lead to lack of empathy, what we call compassion fatigue. You know, that we see so much about the suffering in the world that we get overloaded by these things, and we just don't have the energy to care about all the people that we're seeing suffering. And all these things happen because we're trying to cram a mass amount of information into our tiny heads. And so my second point really is that we can trust a God who knows us completely. We can trust a God who knows everything else completely. And here's part of the secret of the problem, is that actually there's a part of us secretly that wants to know everything that God knows. When you think about Adam and Eve in the garden, what was the temptation that they were tripped up with? What was it that Satan spoke to them about? What did he offer them? He said, you will be like God, knowing good and evil. It was knowledge that Satan tempted them with. Because God said, look, you can do everything, you can eat anything you want, you can go anything you want, you can do everything you want, but there's one tree, the knowledge of the tree in good and evil, which represented, if you like that, who is the one who has the authority to sort of know what is morally right and morally wrong? Who sets the rules? That was the one thing that God said they couldn't do, and it was, of course, the one thing they wanted. Knowledge of good and evil. Knowledge beyond what God had told them they could have. He said, no, I'm the one who says what's good and evil. But we, in Adam and Eve, said, no, we want that knowledge. And ever since then, part of the curse of living in a world that's rebelling against God is that we distrust giving other people, including God, the right to not tell us everything. So it can happen in politicians know more than us about secret things, and yet our default position is to distrust them because they don't tell us everything, even though that pastors know things about people personally and privately, and they make decisions about things. And sometimes people in church, not here thankfully, but I have experienced in other places where you're not trusted because you know stuff but you can't share it with someone, and yet you're saying, look, just trust me, I know things that you don't know. And maybe you've had that situation where you've had information about someone. But what's the problem? The problem is we're almost saying, I refuse to trust someone unless I know everything. And God's just saying, look, information overload should remind us all that we're not meant to know everything. What's the way of peace? The way of peace is to trust God. And think about this just before we go on to wrap things up. How does God treat us? He knows everything about us. Okay? He knows all the things about us that we refuse to share with anyone else because we're ashamed of. He knows all those thoughts. He knows all those actions. How does he treat us? Does he kind of just come with a great big cosmic hammer and crush us? No, he sends his son to rescue us still. Jesus died for sinners. He died for us, knowing that we hated God. And he knew that. He stared it in the face and said, I know what you're really like, the good and the evil. I know what you're really like, and I'll still die for you. So the solution is to now, look, come to me, trust me, who knows everything, and allow me to be your saviour, your Lord. And that's the way of peace. And that's why I put down Psalm 131 at the last paragraph. That there's only 3 verses in the whole psalm, but I just printed the first 2. It's one of the shortest psalms in the Bible. And I think because it talks about being like a child, I wonder if that's why it's such a small psalm. But basically David's saying, look, I'm not too proud. I don't concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. Now, he's basically saying, I'm not a big head. I'm not arrogant. I'm not going to try and claim to know more than I do. I'm just going to be happy with knowing what I know, and knowing what I know about God, I'll trust him for all the stuff I don't know. That's really what... And remember, this is King David saying this. So he's the boss of the whole country. So he's quite an important guy. He's very intelligent, multi-talented, but even he says, I'm just a child, really. And that's a great attitude to have. So by all means, be gifted, become prime minister. David, great warrior, great soldier, great commander, great musician. Do all those things, but at the end, remember that you're still just a child. So do you see how you can still be excellent at stuff and yet humble? And that's really a great lesson to learn there, is that we let God stress about knowing everything, and we can just concentrate on knowing what we know. Learning, sure, but it's about getting that balance. So, last thing to say then we'll wrap things up. We can be set free from having to know it all. So I've kind of more or less talked this to already, but I just saw that was actually an advert. I've reprinted the text, but that was an advert. Stop scrolling. 5 apps to help you cut down your screen time. So I was thinking, what? You need 5, well, I guess you can pick one of them, but like apps to help you not use apps so much on your phone. You couldn't make it up, could you? But why do we scroll all the time? Why there's something about scrolling that speaks about looking, isn't there? Searching. You know, scrolling isn't just a neutral activity when we're searching for stuff. It's saying something about, I haven't, like the song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Have you ever been outside of a group who knew stuff and you were on the outside and they were on the inside? We've got FOMO, haven't we? Fear of missing out. We don't want to be on the outside. So we might buy something because there's only 2 left in stock. Quick, press buy before it runs out. Or, it's going to be out of print next week. So that's why I buy my board games, because they're going to be out of print next week. But then parents may be tracking their kids.
There's a game that'll never be out of.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right, that one. And FOMO. And I suppose today, hopefully, should remind us that, again, we can just stop the stressing and leave God to deal with it. Only Jesus really has the knowledge to look after us. And, he says, look, don't be afraid. Your heavenly Father knows what you need before you ask him. That's a great verse, isn't it, in Matthew's Gospel? Your heavenly Father knows what you need before you ask him. So, again, do not worry. So hopefully that's just giving you a little flavour of why it is so amazing that God knows everything, and also why it's a blessing to be happy to not know much. Okay? Yeah, let's stop that there.